They tried to hand me a bill for $132,000 to upgrade a bridge I built with my own hands. Not a bridge they built. Not a bridge the county owned. My bridge. And when I refused, they started talking about liability, public access, community benefit, all those polished little phrases people use when they want something that belongs to somebody else. Funny thing is, I never argued with them. I never sued them. I never raised my voice. I just removed the bridge. Looking back now, that decision changed a lot more than a stretch of river crossing in eastern Tennessee. My name is Cole Bennett. I'm 59 years old, widowed, mostly retired, though anybody who owns rural property knows retirement is a flexible concept. The land keeps finding ways to give you work whether you ask for it or not. I own about 38 acres along the Broadstone River, tucked between hardwood forests and rolling pasture land. Nothing fancy. No mountain resort views. No tourist attractions. Just quiet land and enough space to hear yourself think. That's why I bought it almost 20 years ago. Back then the property had one annoying problem. The river cut through part of it, and the only practical access to the backfield required a long detour over an old county, crossing nearly 4 miles away. Every time I wanted to move equipment, haul lumber, check fencing, or bring supplies to the workshop I'd built near the western edge, I had to waste half a day driving around. Eventually, I got tired of it. Now, I should probably mention something about myself. If you tell me something can't be done, my first instinct isn't acceptance. It's curiosity. So I hired an engineer, filed permits, waded through inspections, spent an entire summer building a timber bridge that stretched about 40 feet across the narrowest section of the river. Nothing spectacular. Pressure-treated beams, heavy oak decking, steel reinforcement where it mattered. Built strong enough for pickup trucks, tractors, feed trailers, and everyday farm work. Not built for commercial traffic. Not built for tour buses. Not built for delivery fleets. Just built for me. I still remember the day the final inspection passed. The county inspector slapped the railing and said, "This thing will probably outlive both of us." At the time, I believed him. For years, the bridge became part of my daily routine. Coffee in a cup holder. Truck tires rattling softly over the planks. The smell of river water drifting up through the morning fog. Sometimes I'd stop halfway across and just sit there listening. After my wife, Rachel, passed away 7 years ago, those quiet moments became even more important. Grief does strange things. It makes silence feel valuable. The bridge wasn't just lumber anymore. It connected parts of my life. Old memories on one side, whatever came next on the other. For a long time, nobody cared about it, except me. Then everything changed when the land upstream sold. The first sign was orange survey tape tied to trees. Then came the excavators. Then dump trucks. Then crews clearing sections of forest that had been untouched for decades. A company called Riverstone Retreats had purchased nearly 200 acres upstream. Their brochures talked about luxury cabins, curated experiences, nature immersion, riverside weddings, premium hospitality. The usual buzzwords. Around town, people got excited. The local diner started talking about increased tourism. The hardware store owner thought business would boom. The county commissioners practically rolled out a red carpet. I wasn't against development. At least not automatically. But I've lived long enough to know that when somebody starts describing a place as untouched wilderness, they're usually preparing to charge admission. Construction moved fast. Within months, cabins appeared among the trees. Outdoor wedding venues, fire pits, kayak launches, string lights hanging from branches. The place looked like something out of a magazine. Still, it wasn't my business. Their land was upstream. Mine was downstream. The river sat between us. End of story. Or at least that's what I thought. The first truck crossed my bridge about 3 months after the resort opened. White pickup, company logo on the door. I happened to be stacking firewood nearby when I saw it rolling across. I waved the driver down. He looked embarrassed before I even spoke. "Sorry, sir," he said. "GPS sent me this way." I pointed at the weathered sign beside the entrance. "Private property, Through access, he nodded. Apologized. Turned around. Seemed harmless enough. The problem was, it didn't stop. A few days later, another truck appeared. Then a delivery van. then a landscaping trailer, then tourists, then wedding guests. Little by little, my private bridge started becoming part of somebody else's business model. And I had a feeling the people running Riverstone retreats knew exactly what was happening. At first, I tried to handle it the polite way. I replaced the old sign with a bigger one. Fresh white lettering. Impossible to miss. Private bridge and no resort access and no trespassing for about 2 days. It seemed to help. Then the GPS apps apparently won the argument. Every weekend, I watched unfamiliar vehicles creep down my gravel road, hesitate for a second, read the signs, then keep going anyway. One Saturday afternoon, a woman in a luxury SUV rolled down her window and smiled at me. "Is this the scenic entrance?" I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because I realized somebody somewhere had started treating my property like an attraction. The real concern wasn't inconvenience. It was weight. The bridge had been engineered for private farm use. A few pickups, a tractor, the occasional delivery truck. What it wasn't designed for was constant commercial traffic. I could hear the difference. People who don't work with structures may not understand that, but with talks, it creaks differently under stress. The sound changes. The movement changes. One evening, I watched a landscaping truck loaded with stone crawl across the span. The planks groaned so deeply, I felt it in my chest. That was the moment I decided the problem wasn't going away on its own. A few days later, I drove up to Riverstone Retreats. The place was busy. Wedding decorations covered the lawn. Guests wandered between cabins carrying wine glasses. Everything looked expensive. The man running it all was named Grant Mercer. Early 40s. Perfect haircut. Perfect smile. The kind of guy who somehow looked like he belonged in a magazine, even while standing in a muddy construction zone. When I introduced myself, his smile widened. "Cole Bennett," he said. "I've heard about you. Beautiful property. We need to talk about the bridge." The smile stayed, but something behind it shifted. Of course. We sat on a deck overlooking the river. For a moment, he acted like the issue was minor. A misunderstanding. A navigation problem. A simple inconvenience. "Our team is already working on updating directions online." I nodded. "Good. Because your contractors and guests keep crossing private property. Some guests may have accidentally used that route." "Some?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he leaned back and folded his hands. "You know, it's interesting. Our legal team found references to an old access road that connected several parcels decades ago." I remember staring at him. Not because I believed him, because I suddenly understood where the conversation was headed. There are moments when somebody shows you their cards without realizing it. This was one of those moments. "There are no easements on my deed." "Perhaps," he said smoothly, "but historical use can sometimes create complications." Complications. That word stuck with me all the way home. A week later, the certified letter arrived. Thick envelope, attorney letterhead, corporate language wrapped around a very simple message. According to Riverstone's legal team, my bridge functioned as part of a historically utilized access corridor connecting multiple properties. Because of increased usage and public safety concerns, they argued the bridge needed substantial upgrades to meet modern standards. Wider deck, additional reinforcement, commercial load ratings, guardrails, lighting, new inspections, estimated cost, $132,000. I read the number 3 times. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes something is so absurd your brain doesn't know what else to do. The final paragraph was the real masterpiece. As owner of the structure, I could face liability exposure if an accident occurred involving vehicles using the bridge. Think about that for a second. People I didn't invite, using a bridge I built, to support a business I didn't own. And somehow I was supposed to spend 6 figures protecting them. I barely slept that night. Not because I feared losing the argument. I feared getting trapped inside it. Anybody who's dealt with lawsuits knows the truth. Winning and surviving aren't always the same thing. The next morning, I called my neighbor, Harold Pierce. Harold was 74 years old and had spent nearly 40 years working as a county surveyor. If there was anybody I trusted with land questions, it was him. He came over carrying a folder and a thermos of coffee. We spread documents across my kitchen table. Deeds, maps, surveys, permits, inspection reports. He studied everything for nearly an hour before speaking. No easement. You sure? As sure as I've ever been. He tapped one survey with a thick finger. If there was shared access, it'd be recorded. What about historical use? Harold snorted. Historical use is what people talk about when paperwork doesn't support their story. That made me feel better. For about a week. Then the county inspector showed up. Nice guy. Apologetic. Looked uncomfortable before he even stepped out of his truck. Anonymous complaint, he said. About what? Potential public safety concerns. Of course. He walked the bridge. Measured railings. Checked decking. Reviewed inspection history. When he finished, he lowered his clipboard. For private use, it's fine. I already knew there was a but coming. But if commercial traffic becomes involved, standards change. I felt my jaw tighten. I didn't invite commercial traffic. He gave me a look that basically said he understood exactly what was happening. The problem was understanding didn't stop paperwork. After he left, I drove straight to the resort. This time Grant wasn't smiling as much. I walked into his office and closed the door behind me. You filed that complaint. We're concerned about safety. You mean liability. Cole, if guests are using your bridge, that's a shared issue. No, I said, it's a you issue. For the first time, the charm slipped. Not completely, just enough. We're willing to collaborate. There it was. The sales pitch. He slid a proposal across his desk. Riverstone would contribute a portion of the upgrade costs. We'd split the remainder. Then we'd establish formal access rights. Permanent access rights. I stared at the paper. The entire strategy suddenly became crystal clear. Step 1. Use the bridge. Step 2. Create dependency. Step 3. Turn convenience into entitlement. Step 4. Convince me to pay for the privilege. I pushed the proposal back. I don't need a commercial bridge. It benefits both properties. It benefits yours. His jaw tightened. Improved infrastructure increases land value. I stood up. You know what increases my land value? What? Keeping in mind, for several seconds, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt heavy. Then he smiled again. Only this time the smile never reached his eyes. As I walked out, I had a feeling the real fight hadn't even started yet. And unfortunately, I was right. Over the next month, things got uglier. Not dramatic movie ugly. Not shouting matches in parking lots. The real kind. Paperwork. Pressure. Assumptions slowly hardening into expectations. The traffic kept coming. Delivery trucks. Wedding vendors. Guests following navigation apps that apparently believed private property signs were optional suggestions. I started keeping a notebook by the front door. License plates. Dates. Times. Photos. Not because I enjoyed documenting strangers. Because I could feel the ground shifting underneath the argument. The longer people treated my bridge like public infrastructure, the easier it would become for somebody to claim it practically was. One Saturday afternoon, a catering truck tried crossing before a wedding. I heard the engine before I saw it. Big box truck, far heavier than anything that bridge had ever been designed to carry. I walked into the middle of the span and stood there. The driver rolled down his window. We're running late. Not across here. He pointed toward his phone. This is the route GPS gave us. I shrugged. GPS doesn't own the bridge. For a second, he looked like he might argue. Instead, he backed up. Slowly. Angrily. That evening, my phone rang. Grant. His voice was calm, but only barely. I hear you blocked one of our vendors. I protected my property. You're escalating things. I laughed. Actually laughed. You tried handing me a six-figure bill. Silence. Then he said something that finally stripped away all the corporate language. We may need to pursue formal access recognition. There it was. The threat. Not hidden. Not disguised. Just sitting there between us. After we hung up, I sat on my porch until dark. The river moved quietly through the trees. I kept thinking about a simple question. What happens when somebody decides your property is more useful to them than it is to you? A week later, I met with a property attorney in Knoxville. I brought every document I owned. Photos, surveys, inspection records, letters, everything. He spent nearly 2 hours reviewing the situation. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. You're in a strong position. That's good. Not necessarily. I frowned. What does that mean? It means you'd probably win. Probably sounds okay. He shook his head. Cole, legal fights don't happen on television. They happen in bank accounts. That sentence hit harder than anything Grant's lawyers had sent. The attorney continued. If they pursue access claims, challenge boundaries, request hearings, involve agencies, eventually you may win. May? He nodded. Maybe after years. I sat quietly for a moment. Then I asked the question that changed everything. What's the cleanest solution? He didn't even hesitate. Remove the bridge. I honestly thought he was joking. I laughed. He didn't. No bridge means no access argument. I stared at him. No structure. No traffic. No liability. No dependency. No leverage. The drive home felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about fighting. I was thinking about ending the fight. Entirely. For the next week, I walked across that bridge every evening. Slowly. Remembering. The day Rachel and I drove our first truck across it. The weekends spent hauling lumber. The mornings with coffee and fog rising off the water. The bridge wasn't just wood. It was 20 years of my life. And that's what made the decision difficult. Not Grant. Not lawyers. Not money. Memory. Memory is always the hardest thing to dismantle. The permit process turned out to be surprisingly simple. A few forms. A few signatures. A few inspections. Then approval. The following month, I hired 3 local guys I'd known for years. No giant contractors. No corporate crews. Just neighbors. The morning demolition started. Fog hovered above the river. The air smelled like wet leaves and fresh-cut timber. I stood at the entrance while the crew unloaded tools. Across the water, I could see part of Riverstone retreats through the trees. Cabins. Wedding pavilion. String lights. A whole business that had slowly convinced itself my bridge belonged in its future. The first plank came loose just after sunrise. The sound surprised me. A long groan followed by the sharp squeal of old nails pulling free. For a moment, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not regret exactly. Something close. Around lunchtime, a black SUV pulled up. Grant stepped out. He stared at the missing boards for several seconds before walking toward me. What are you doing? I looked around, honestly surprised he even asked. Removing a liability. His expression darkened. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. He glanced toward the growing stack of lumber. Cole, this affects our operations. I nodded. I know. Deliveries. Guests. Emergency access. Those sound like your problems. His jaw tightened. We were prepared to discuss cost sharing. I don't want a commercial bridge. This isn't just about you. That one almost made me smile. Funny how people always discover community values when they need something. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, "You're hurting local business." I looked past him toward the resort. The cabins. The wedding venue. The parking lots full of cars. Business seemed fine. You know what hurts local business? I asked. What? Sending your neighbor a bill for $132,000. For the first time since we'd met, he didn't have a response. He turned and walked away. By sunset, the center span was gone. The river flowed uninterrupted beneath open sky. And standing there looking at that empty space, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not victory. Not revenge. Relief. The next morning, there were no trucks. No confused tourists. No vendors. Just wind moving through sycamore trees and water sliding downstream. Within weeks, navigation apps updated. Guests used the longer county road. Riverstone adapted. The weddings continued. The cabins stayed full. Life went on, which revealed the truth I'd suspected all along. They never needed my bridge. They just wanted a shortcut. A month later, we attended a mediation meeting. Their final offer was simple. They would fund most of a brand new bridge if I granted permanent recorded access across my property. I listened politely. Then I said no. Not because I hated them. Not because I wanted revenge. Because some things become expensive long before money enters the conversation. Privacy, peace, control. Once those leave, they're hard to buy back. Today, the riverbank has mostly healed. Grass grows where the road once ended. The old approaches blend into the landscape. Sometimes I sit on my porch in the evening and look toward the gap where the bridge used to stand. And honestly, I miss it. I miss the memories attached to it. But I don't miss the fight. I don't miss strangers treating my property like public infrastructure. And I definitely don't miss people explaining why I should sacrifice something because it makes their lives easier. Maybe some folks think I overreacted. Maybe they're right. Others say I protected something more valuable than a bridge. Maybe they're right too. So now I'm curious what you think. If you were in my position, would you have accepted the money and granted permanent access? Would you have partnered with the resort and embraced the growth? Or would you have done exactly what I did and removed the leverage completely, even if it meant destroying something you spent years building? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely interested because stories like this rarely have perfect heroes or villains. Most of the time, they're just about people, pressure, property, pride, and where each of us decides to draw the line.